Hello, Professor and classmates. My name is Oscar Cueva, and today I will be talking about our topic presenting and practicing language. So, in this case, we will be playing the role of a teacher, and we need to figure out how to deal with all these approaches we have. And of course, we have two main questions regarding this topic which are the following: when it is useful to use this approach, and of course, what we think the disadvantages are when putting into practice these approaches. So, let me explain this to you in the next few minutes. First, we have visual and oral context. Okay, when it is useful to use the visuals, let's say we are dealing with past tense and we present flashcards. So with those flashcards, we have actions or verbs. So then you relate the action with the verb present, but then you have to put it together to make the past tense. So in that way, we're using visuals. And some of the disadvantages might be that not all the students that you have in your classroom will be paying close attention when you're presenting the action verbs. So they are not interested on what you're presenting, what you're showing to them in flashcards. They might be interest. They might be interested in something else, like I will be explaining later. When revising language, so text can be very useful in a good way to introduce and practice listening and reading skills in this case, when we pay close attention on what we are doing here. So, what is those disadvantages that we have in here is that your students might get bored when they are reading a text without a really clear explanation of what they have to do, or if you don't guide them of what the reading is about. So, might be some of the issues you might encounter with this approach. And what I believe is useful when, for example, you're using a formal language to reply an email, so you can explain to them the structure and then have them reading a clear and very precise email, like formal email. Now we come ahead with one of the most important for me and the ones that I consider helped me a lot when I was learning English is the use of short dialogues. Why is this important to use dialogues in your classroom? First, because you give your students the chance to play roles and practice their pronunciation. You give the chance then to show off in your classroom. So this is very important. Some of the disadvantages might be that not all your students are like extrovert. So some of them might be shy and they wouldn't like to go in front of the class or do peer work. So that's one of the disadvantages you might have with this approach. The next approach is test, teach, test. So in this case, for example, you're providing a certain topic, let's say that is a simple past or passing in general. So then you need to go and monitor your students and you need to check if they understand what you are actually teaching. So then you might come up with a good activity in which you can test, right, what they have learned. For example, this can be a communicative activity, right? Can be written as well or oral. So let's say that we have an written activity. So we go ahead and create our own story in past tense. What I should do, or what I suggest to do, is that you start a story by yourself, but then you have your students in line, and then you say, boop, change. So you move papers from this first student to the second one to the third one, and so on. So you get the time to for them to read a little bit and then start writing again. So that might be a good activity for a past tense. So it's pretty useful. We also have the students based research. This is one of my favorite as well, because this one pushed the student to do their own learning and look for ways of learning something different outside the classroom. In this case, basically, you have your students presenting, might be orally, talking about anything that you assigned them, of course. So one of the advantages is that your students are pushed to do their own learning and look for information, look for examples, real context, which is very important to understand English language in this case. And what I believe the disadvantages might be is that sometimes we get blocked, we get stuck, and we don't understand a topic. So we need the help of our teachers. That's one of the disadvantages that I believe it exists in here. And last but not least, this is something that we have heard over the years during our majoring in Universidad de Oriente, is the inductive and deductive approach. So when do we have inductive? So inductive is basically a context is established first from which the target instruction is drawn or is going to be required. So we can use these approaches in here, like for example, the visual or context, text, and short dialogues, because first you establish a context and then boom, you bring your student to the point which you want them to be. So you induct them to the context. And of course, we have the deductive, in which here is totally different. For example, the language, the grammar language, it's presented first, and then they have to apply what they have learned in this one. But one of the disadvantages in here is that, for example, in the inductive, I mean deductive. In the deductive, it's not all it is not going to work all the time with those students that first need to be in a real context or to establish a context for them first. Because that happened to me. I was not really good at that. I wanted to be like, I wanted to have first the context in which I was going to be applying language. So in that way, I can learn better. So, so this is it. I think because of the time, um, um, I'm not able to talk more about this, but it's always a pleasure. And thank you so much for watching my video. Bye bye.